Hi everyone, welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by DataTalks.Club, which is a community of people who love data. We have weekly events, usually have like summer was pretty slow, but now it's September. It's back to school days. So now we will try to resume all our weekly events. And today is one of such events. And if you want to find out more about the events we have, there is a link in the description. Click on that link and you will see what we have in our pipeline, which is not a lot right now. In addition to this event, we have one workshop. So check it out. It will be a very interesting workshop. It's happening this month. So the link is in in the description. And very important, if you don't want to miss out on future streams, future interviews, future events like the one we have today, do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I know the interface looks different now and we have a lot more subscribers, but I'm sure you will find the subscribe button. And yeah, we have an amazing Slack community. Join that too. And during today's interview, you can ask any question you want. There is a pinned link in the live chat. Click on that link and ask your questions, and we will be covering these questions during the interview. So this is the usual introduction I do. And now I need to open the document with the questions. Well, yeah, I have it now. And if you're ready, we can start.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. This week we'll talk about MLOps. We will talk about pragmatic and standardized MLOps. And actually, we just finished our MLOps course. And for the students who just graduated, this will be a very interesting and relevant interview. So in addition to what we learned, what we covered in the course, we will see how to actually implement some of these things we talked about. And we have a very special guest today, Maria. Maria is a machine learning engineer. She is bridging the gap between data scientists, infrastructure and IT teams at different brands, and she is focused on standardization of machine learning ops. And yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. And I love your course, by the way. It's amazing. I've never fully did that, but I looked through it and I recommend it to everyone. And I'm planning to do it too at some point.
Well, I'm not sure how much you will learn, but hopefully maybe you will learn something. So yeah, please let me know how it goes.
I think it's always interesting to see how others do the courses. So that's what I like about it.
Yeah. Thanks. So the questions for today's interview are prepared by Johanna Bayer, as always. Thanks, Johanna, for your help. So now let's start. And before we go into the main topic of our interview today, which is MLOps, let's start with your background. Can you tell us about your career journey so far?
Yes, it's been a while already. I'm almost for 10 years in data and AI field. I started as a data analyst. I studied economics and econometrics, so doing something in data was logical, I guess. And data science wasn't there yet. There was some data analyst job and I got one. So I did a lot of things in R, built some models, churn and acquisition models for telecom company, and did some automation on some cron jobs running on some servers standing in the room. It was funny. So no.
So it was an actual physical machine, right? An actual physical
in the room
computer.
With a key. Yeah, actual machine. Yes.
So you needed to go to that room, right?
Yeah.
Open like, I don't know, there was probably like a screen, right? And then you would, I don't know, use a USB stick with your program or?
No. There was a shared drive that we had access to, and we could indeed schedule things. It was fun. So I really liked automation already back then. And then I moved to another team that was my position already formerly data scientist. And I learned Python back then and fully switched to Python. So I did some models for the fraud detection for mobile subscriptions. And also was busy with it with NLP. And the main project I was working on was Model Factory, which is basically an MLOps project. It was 7 years ago. MLOps was not a thing, but we already standardized the process of machine learning model deployments across different departments at that company. It was KPN, telecom company in the Netherlands. And that was really thinking very forward back then. I was one busy with this. And we had a governance on top of that with Teradata. So yeah, it was interesting. And we rebuilt that system multiple times because tool stack was changing over time. And the last version of it was using Kubernetes and Elk Stack for monitoring. And we had Bitbucket and Jenkins we had for orchestration. And then we also did this iteration with AWS native tools with SageMaker, step functions, and all of that.
Do you
And
remember
now,
what was the first stack? How did it look like?
Yeah, so KPN bought Aster. I don't know whether anyone knows what Aster is, but it was something from no, it's good. It's horrible, but it was a product from Teradata, and it was a distributed computing, something like kind of Spark, but worse. You could do machine learning in SQL. You could do run the forest in SQL and stuff like that. It had also
doesn't sound terrible though.
Well, it did not work very well. It wasn't very
okay.
user friendly. So we built some wrappers on top of that. We basically triggered execution on those servers. And we used Bitbucket, and we had Teradata and some, I'm not sure what kind of dashboard that was back then. Some Python dashboard we had with the history about the runs, and you could do interactive search across multiple model runs. And all metadata about the models, about experimentation, we were storing in Teradata database. And if you look at MLflow, what MLflow does now, it's pretty much kind of what we did, but the backend was different. And we had our own wrappers, like store metadata, store RC results, store experimentation results. I don't remember the function names anymore. It's probably still somewhere on GitHub. So it is funny. And now I'm kind of doing the same MLOps framework, but tools are different. In every company, tools are different. And I think you have to go with what you've got, because fighting for getting new tools, it's not always a good idea. It will take you a long time. I'm not sure you gain anything from it. So here we have GitHub Actions. We use Databricks for pretty much everything, and we have Kubernetes. Well, I think I have quite good experience building it with this tool stack. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So you started doing MLOps before it was a thing, when you were a data scientist, and now your title is ML engineer, right?
Well, I guess I'm a MLOps tech lead. I don't per se have a title. My official title is manager of machine learning engineering something, but I guess I combine 3 different roles in myself. It's more like a product manager, also advertising what we do and talking to different departments across the organization and trying to promote what we do, get budgets, also developing and creating the roadmap.
That sounds like a lot. Do you still get to do hands-on stuff?
Not that much as I used to before, but I still try to do something myself.
Yeah. I think I was doing something quite similar to what you're doing right now, and I did not have time to do hands-on stuff at all.
In the evenings, yeah.
In the evenings,
yeah.
Work-related or not?
Well, I guess now I spend a lot of evenings on Marvelous MLOps. And everything we write about is very much work related, because we write a lot about the specific tool stacks we also use and the best practices we implement in our organization. So yeah, I also code work related in the evenings, and the weekends occasionally.
So
I like it too much, I guess.
What's Marvelous MLOps? You mentioned that.
Yeah. Marvelous MLOps is a blog that we started in April this year together with my colleague Bashak. We work together at Ahold Delhaize at this moment, and we wanted to share our knowledge with the world. And we started with a Medium blog, and we created a company page on LinkedIn. And later, Raphael joined us, and we work with 3 of us now on creating the articles. We post an article every week, and we create content 3 times per week. We have a meme, and we have a post-it or a cheat sheet, something like that. And we also have a newsletter. Mm-hmm. So I really like doing that. It's really mm-hmm. fun, and I also now post every day on LinkedIn. Yeah, I really like it. I enjoy doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I come across your posts quite often. Well, when I do, I of course like them, so you can see like the posts are liked, and I saw that. Okay, so yeah, if somebody wants to find out more about that, they should follow you, right?
Yeah, of course, you should follow mm-hmm. Marvelous MLOps. We do post a lot of useful information about how to become better in MLOps and how to mm-hmm. think pragmatically about it. Yeah.
Which is the topic of today's interview, right? So maybe we take a step back, and I'm curious to know your definition of MLOps. What, in your opinion, MLOps is?
Yeah, MLOps is a set of practices that allows data scientists to bring models to production in an efficient way. And I really see MLOps as an enablement tool, that you don't have another team that helps you to deploy things, but the data scientists need to be given the freedom to do it themselves. But the goal of a MLOps team is not just enable, but also to teach data scientists how to use it in a correct way. Because if you just give a tool and don't explain how it works and how it should be used, it goes wrong. So that's how I see it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's almost the same definition I use in the course, I think. For me, I think I use something like it's a set of practices and tools to enable to bring the data science machine learning to production. I think this, I don't remember the exact definition, but I think we're like, it's almost the same one.
Yeah.
You mentioned MLOps team. So I'm wondering, so in what kind of setup do you have in mind? So is there a central MLOps team that helps other teams with deployment of their machine learning models?
Yeah, so how I see it, the MLOps team is a team that provides MLOps infrastructure, so it deploys the tools that are being used for MLOps. They also provide things like maybe reusable CI/CD pipelines, the authentication mechanisms. It's all done in a standardized way, so that these product teams don't have to figure it out on their own. Because pretty much everything that is done within the organization is kind of, everyone is repeating themselves. Mm-hmm. So to avoid that, most of this workload should be on a central team, but you still need data scientists, you still need machine learning engineers. So machine learning engineers will be working on optimizing the code the data scientists write, working really closely to them. And for example, if there are certain requirements from latency point of view, those are machine learning engineers that are helping with that. But MLOps is more like an infrastructure team, really, I would say, rather than a machine learning engineering team. But it's very related.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that there are teams, we can call them, I don't know, feature teams or product teams, that work on specific parts of the product? So they have data analysts, data scientists, ML engineers. Yeah. And then there is a central MLOps team that provides the infrastructure that enables other teams to deploy machine learning to production. And then the central team also teaches the ML engineers and data scientists from other teams how to use this set of tools, this set of practices to be able to achieve what they want, right?
Yeah, that's how I see it. And monitoring is also one of the important things that also the central team needs to be providing. And I think this works well in this setup. I don't know whether other people have different experiences, but from our experience, it works quite well.
Yeah, I'm also curious to know if there is any other kind of setup where there is no centralized team. for MLOps, and the teams are still kind of doing this. Because in my case, it was a very similar setup. There was a centralized MLOps team, and then there were other teams who would follow the best practices and tools, use the tools provided by the team. Interesting. Okay, and so today we wanted to talk about pragmatic MLOps, and I'm curious to know, like, why is it even a thing? Like, how is there like a non-pragmatic MLOps, and what's the difference between like non-pragmatic and pragmatic MLOps?
Yeah, so I think everyone knows probably about this MED landscape. This MED landscape, it grows every year. If you compare the MED landscape from 2 years ago to what it is now, it's just blown up. It's crazy. So basically, that's a map that shows what kind of tools are there for different parts of MLOps. So what are there for machine learning model deployment, for feature stores, for monitoring, you name it, like literally all aspects of AI, and it's just growing.
This picture with like a lot of logos, right? And recently, like it's like tiny logos. You really need to zoom in to see any individual ones. It's just like a huge set of logos, right? That's
exactly.
The thing you're referring to. Yeah, I think I saw them. These pictures on LinkedIn.
It's a madness. I call it. It's really madness, and it's not helping anyone. I think it creates like the imposter syndrome, that people think they don't know anything and that there are so many tools. But the fact is that buying any tool will not really solve your problems. Typically, the main problem that I see is an organizational problem. The teams are organized in the wrong way, and the tools are already there, actually. If you look at the tools within any large organization, you already have Kubernetes, you already have something for orchestration, something for version control, something for CI/CD pipelines, pretty much something for everything you need for MLOps. And it doesn't make any sense to buy any new tools, because it will be, first of all, hard to convince people why you need that in the first place. But secondly, if you even buy it, you would spend possibly years on integrating it with the rest of the organization. It may work very well, I believe, for small companies. So there are many tools that claim to do end-to-end, and I guess if you don't have anything, if you are a startup, then maybe for the time being, it's a good idea to have something like that. But in large organization, it's not gonna help. That's what I really believe in.
Mm-hmm. So that's the pragmatic part. The non-pragmatic part is trying to look at this landscape and have this fear of missing out. Like, oh, I need to have all these tools. Like, let's try to buy, learn, integrate, spend like, I don't know, 5 years trying to do that all, instead of using the tools that are already there and focus on thinking like, how can we use these tools that we already have to deploy our projects, right?
Yeah, because tools are changing all the time. By the time that you integrated, everything's already outdated. Because every 2 years there isn't this new cycle, I believe, in the tooling.
Mm-hmm. And what is like a must-have set of tools that we need to have? Like, what are the categories? I imagine like maybe there are some categories that we can introduce later, but at the beginning we just need like just the basic one that cover, I don't know, 80% of cases.
Yeah, we have this article on the Marvelous MLOps Substack. It's a featured article at this moment. So it covers really minimal setup. So you really need the version control. You really need the CI/CD pipeline, CI/CD tool like Jenkins or GitHub Actions or GitLab pipelines. You need to have something for Docker registry. You need to have something for model registry. You need to have something for deploying the models. So it's probably Kubernetes or maybe some tools like Azure ML or Databricks. They provide managed services for deploying things. That may work as well. Feature stores I wouldn't consider as a minimal, because you could, I guess, have some workarounds And monitoring is crucial. You must have monitoring. That's also a part of absolute minimum. I guess I mentioned them all. Maybe I forgot something, but I think that's it. Yeah.
Well, I imagine any software company already has version control system like GitLab or GitHub or whatever. Then CI/CD too, right? And then probably some sort of Docker registry, could be from GitLab or I don't know, Amazon, whatever. And then probably there is a way to deploy things, like maybe there is Kubernetes or some other container orchestration platform. But when it comes to model registry and monitoring, like maybe there is nothing, or maybe there is something.
You can use Artifactory. So at KPN, where we worked before, we had we basically use Artifactory from JFrog. You can
what is Artifactory?
Artifactory, it's like a package registry or any object registry. Really, you can have PyPy hosted there. Maybe even you can also upload any files there, and you can assign attributes to those files, so they become searchable. They also have nice Python integration. You can just store files in S3 buckets. I don't know. You can also assign attributes to them and search through them. You have to build something around it, but I mean, it wouldn't be a total nightmare, right? If you don't have MLflow specifically, which I love MLflow though. But for minimal setup, something like that would also be okay. If you don't have anything, you don't have a team to support anything like that, then it's also gonna be okay. The idea is just things that are traceable and reproducible, and that's the main key idea. We also have this list on MLOps maturity assessment. I think I had a post about it 2 days ago. I will also put it in featured on my LinkedIn so people can see. That's an Excel sheet with 60 questions that goes through all aspects of MLOps, or at least main aspects that we see as more important. And that's how you can see how mature you are and what you do. And I think that's a great start to see what things are structurally missing, so that you can act on them in a strategic way.
What is, you said there are 60 questions in this spreadsheet, right? Do you remember what kind of, well, maybe we will not go into all 60, but maybe you remember what kind of categories of questions are there?
Yeah, of course. So there is a documentation piece, which I find very important. Documentation is always missing, but we really need to pay attention to documentation. Then there are aspects regarding traceability and reproducibility, that for every run of machine learning project, you need to be able to find what code was responsible for the run, what compute was responsible for the run, what model was responsible for certain deployment, where it was stored, all of that, and that you can always roll back easily. Because if you don't have this in place, then rolling back process would be very tedious. You really don't want to go there. Then also code quality is an important piece of this assessment, that you need to ensure that there are, if things are changed, there are pull requests created, there are multiple people looking at your pull request, and that there are also, the merge is blocked unless you have certain tests to be run. There is also test coverage, maybe assessment on how well your testing is covered, integration testing, all that stuff. So those are important pieces that I guess mentioned there. There are many more about feature stores, monitoring as well. But yeah, these are some examples.
Well, I imagine if you work at a startup and you already, let's say, have your first ML model, or maybe first multiple ML models, often, at least my experience, is you kind of deploy them in you only live once mode. Like, okay, let's just deploy it, roll them out, and keep our fingers crossed, nothing will break. But then at some point, this startup, this organization becomes more mature, and they actually realize that they need these things. In which order should they introduce? Like, should they start with documentation? Should they start with traceability? Should they start with code quality? Should they start with feature stores? Because like this, there are 60 questions, right? But then as a startup, you cannot just stop everything you do and then let's cover all these 60 questions, and then 2 years later we come back and continue working on that stuff, right?
No, well, documentation is of course important, but I guess it's less critical than having proper version control and code quality guidelines and the traceability and reproducibility. So if that is covered, at least that will save you from a lot of headache later. Other things are of course also important, but that is really crucial, because if you don't have that, it's gonna be mess, a lot of mess.
And all these things, at least this is how it sounded, all these questions, they are more about processes, right? So it's like, okay, how do you deploy in such a way that we have traceability and reproducibility and we can easily roll back, right? So it's about having these guidelines, right? And teaching people, like, I don't know, machine learning engineers from other teams. If this happens, what do you do, right? If there is a bug, how do you roll back, right?
Yeah, but it depends on the tools, right? So this assessment is a very high level one. It doesn't go into tools. But what we do right in our blog, we have some article on traceability and reproducibility, how we use it with Databricks specifically. But you can think about similar setup for Kubernetes deployments, right? It's just about it really, you have to really look at the tools you have to implement that. But for us, I think it's important to see this definition of done, which is not really present. That's my feeling for data science projects. So if the model is just deployed, then it's good. We don't really look at all those things that must be there before you can consider something is in production. I've seen scheduled notebooks in Databricks without any version control, and they claim to be in production. But I wouldn't call it in production if almost 0% of the whole list is covered, right?
Okay. So if we come back to our discussion about pragmatic MLOps, maybe we can somehow summarize what exactly is pragmatic and how can we be pragmatic about MLOps?
Yeah, so I think it depends whether you're in large organization, maybe in a startup indeed. So from my experience, I only worked in large corporate companies. So from corporate companies perspective, you shouldn't look into buying tools in the first place, but more into looking what tools you already have and how you can use them so that you score high in this MLOps maturity based on the assessment, as an example. And also, how do you structure the team so that data scientists can actually deploy themselves with proper guardrails in place, but not blocking data scientists from doing the deployments? What I've seen so often is that there are data science teams which are totally separate from the IT department, and then IT department has their own DevOps engineers and cloud engineers and other engineers, and data scientists just have no permissions to do anything. And it's just throwing over the wall kind of situation happening. So you really want to avoid that and see how you can structure team in a way that it's sustainable for everyone. So I think those two aspects, the team organization and the choice of the tooling, are main components, I guess, of this pragmatic MLOps.
So you probably already have all the tools you need to start with those, right? And then think about the structure of your teams, how exactly it's organized. Like, are you helping data scientists or you're just blocking them and you are annoying them? So I remember when I was a data scientist, I needed to deploy something, but then somebody from the ops team needed to, I don't know, do something. And then they're, of course, almost always busy. Right, and then I'm just sitting and waiting. Okay, like, should I go check YouTube, watch, I don't know, cat videos? What should I do now? Okay, so that's pragmatic MLOps. And we also, I think we covered that a little bit. We also wanted to talk about standardized MLOps. And from what I understood from our discussion, we already talked about this maturity assessment questions and some things that we covered there. Like, okay, how do you go about reproducibility? How do you go about, I don't know, rolling back and so on? Is this something that related to standardization?
Yeah, I guess so. So I think the choice of the tooling is related to standardization. So we work in a large corporate organization with 19 brands all over the world. A lot are in Europe, in Greece, Serbia, Romania, Czech Republic. We also have brands in the US. But pretty much everyone has the same tool stack with slight variations. So we basically bring it to the same structure everywhere, and we provide reusable CI/CD pipelines for everyone that everyone can use. And those CI/CD pipelines go beyond just CI/CD pipelines. So we introduced a cookie cutter repository. Well, data scientists typically hate cookie cutter templates because it's not always clear how to use them. So we made it simpler. It's just a simple action in a repository where people can trigger, and your name of your repository should follow some conventions, otherwise it wouldn't be able to deploy. And it checks whether you have permissions to create this repository, because you need to belong to a certain GitHub group to be able to deploy, create a certain repository with certain naming convention. So, and then that person triggers the workflow, and it also applies. So we are on Azure, so we use service principals. It applies service principals credentials, which are organizational secrets, to those repositories, which means that after this cookie cutter template runs, the data scientist has a working repository with main.py that can already be deployed on Databricks, which is tagged for the cost management point of view. And basically everything is covered. They don't have to think about it at all. We don't have proper guardrails yet, but we're working on it to, for example, say that certain branches are blocked and you can just push there. So they have to implement it now by hand, but we are working on it actually to also disallow to push to master, to create default branches and all that stuff. It's also possible to automate all of that as part of this cookie cutter. Yeah, so that's how
that's quite impressive. So if I'm a data scientist and let's say I need to create a model for I don't know, fraud detection, or I don't know, customer scoring, whatever. So this is a model that needs to be served online. I want to serve it as a web service. So then there is a cookie cutter template that is specifically for that. I go, as I understood, like all I need to do is click some sort of button, right? And then fill in some information, or I don't know, maybe run something in command line, right? That will ask me, like, what's the project? The team, I guess, because you mentioned tags. And then I do that, I execute, and at the end I have a working project in my repo with a CI/CD pipeline for deployment. Like there's already main.py file that I can deploy using this CI/CD pipeline. And like all the tags are assigned. Like right now with this project, what I can do is already get the model from, I don't know, model registry and start serving, right?
So how we see it is that, well, main.py needs to be replaced with your actual logics. You still need to create a package. So we are on Databricks, so data scientists, like all data scientists, love using notebooks, but luckily Databricks notebooks are not just as Jupyter notebooks. They're quite nice for version control, at least. But we have also an article on how for data scientists to move from a notebook to actual working production code. So we encourage data scientists to create functions and classes and modules and move the logics outside of the notebooks to keep notebooks really short and clean. And that's the main execution file. Then you also create some packaging logic. So you would need to have either poetry tomo or setup.py. And with that, so our pipelines take care of that. They know that there is a package, that package has to be moved to DBFS, and it's all gonna work. So they don't have to think about that even.
Amazing. How long did it take to implement this?
Well, implementation wasn't long. I think it's less than half a year to implement that, but 1 year to tell everyone that we are doing that and agree with the DevOps engineers to give us permissions to do things.
So, because DevOps folks do not like when data scientists can mess up with their Kubernetes clusters, right?
Yeah, well, we have now dedicated machine learning environments, which only we use. So then basically don't care that much, I guess.
I see. So it took 6 months to implement, but before that you needed to do all this, how to say it, like preparation
Convincing.
work.
Convincing.
Did you do this yourself?
Yeah.
As a tech lead? Okay. Do you have any tips how to address that? Like if somebody is also facing some hesitation from the DevOps team?
Yeah. So 2 years ago, the first thing we did, we went through all the brands and gave them the questionnaires. The questionnaire that I was talking about, it exists already for a while. And that's how we started. So we gave it to everyone. We did this assessment for all the machine learning models we could find. And we showed them that we are pretty much at zero. So you can't say you're doing things in the right way. And we were also in a situation that DevOps engineers that were deploying machine learning models, they have zero understanding of machine learning, but they were responsible for the deployment. And if there were errors, they would send the errors of the email to the data scientists that would try it out in a different environment than where production is running and couldn't reproduce the errors. So this kind of loop can go on and on and on. And so no one was happy. So there was already pain. So there was pain. We made the pain visible by doing the assessment and showing, look, there is clearly something wrong going on. We wrote the whole document on how to do data science project. So data science framework, we call it. And we created a set of standards, MLOps standards that actually now become official document within our organization that, well, internal audit can check whether you're actually following those rules. So these three things helped a lot. And then I think there was also trust already between our departments a bit. And it allowed us to move further.
So I guess my main takeaway from that is you wanted them to feel the pain, like make the pain visible. So then they realize, okay, we actually have this problem, and maybe there is a way to solve this problem, right? And then you say, we actually want to solve this problem.
Yeah, we know how to solve the problem. Yeah.
And these people then helped you convince the DevOps engineers, or it was the DevOps engineers who?
No, I was convincing the lead of IT platform and also DevOps engineers, and that's how we at least got our own service principal with the right permission to deploy things ourselves.
Okay. And how large is the team for you? Like, who was on that team? Because like in order to implement something like that, like this cookie cutter template, reusable CI/CD pipelines, you need engineers, right? Somebody who implements that. So who and how many people you had on the team?
Yeah, it's crazy. We basically did it with 3 people.
3 people. Okay, impressive.
Yeah, coding,
including you, right?
Including me, yeah.
So who are these people?
So there was me, Bashak, who is my colleague that we work together in Marvelous MLOps, and also our colleague from another department, but he kind of works on MLOps, Arne Müller. He doesn't have LinkedIn, so we can't add his LinkedIn. Hopefully he creates it.
Yeah, he should.
Yeah, he should.
But I'm more interested in the profiles, in the roles. Like, are they more engineers? Are they data scientists? What kind of background do they have? Do they already know like Kubernetes and all these tools?
ML engineers, we all know Kubernetes. We all know something about Databricks. So it's not like we started from zero, right? We didn't have any juniors. It was all up mid-year senior profiles.
And what is also interesting, and the reason I'm asking that, is because in our course, in the MLOps course, we try to cover the fundamentals, right? So we break down what we think MLOps is into multiple areas, which is like experiment tracking, machine learning pipelines, then what else? Deployment, then monitoring, and then best practices. I think that this is what we focus on. And then, like, instead of exploring all possible tools, we just pick one and try to learn how to use that one. And yeah, of course, like when people who graduate join a company, probably the tools will be different. Instead of Prefect, it will be probably, I don't know, Airflow or Jenkins or whatever. Like instead of Evidently, maybe there will be, Elasticsearch and Kibana. Instead of I don't know, MLflow, there will be nothing, right? So what I'm trying to ask you is what kind of profile people need to have what kind of things they need to know to be able to join a company and start implementing things like that.
Yeah, so that's what I think. Tools, of course, it's nice to know some of the tools, but I think the most important thing is understanding the idea behind it, right? So that there are tools that fall within different pieces. So there are different tools for CI/CD. Doesn't matter what you use. I really believe it doesn't matter that much. Or version control, what you use doesn't matter. For orchestration, for registry, doesn't matter what you use. You just have to be tied together in a way that follows those principles which are written in the assessment. So if you understand that and already try to do it at least once with it, doesn't matter what tools, then you are good. If you just try to do it once, to combine all these pieces together using whatever tools, you're fine. I think you're prepared to do it with anything else.
So if somebody did a project in our course, then they're probably ready. Because the purpose of this project is actually take all these tools and stitch them together in something that doesn't fall apart and works.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is probably the most difficult part, right?
It is super difficult indeed. It is super difficult. Yeah.
And then from what I heard from you, a good idea would be to actually go ahead and check the assessment we talked about, right?
Yes.
And understand how much you can make sense of things there, right? And if some things are not clear, then this is something that they can read about. Because, for example, we don't really talk about documentation in the course. And I know we don't talk about feature stores, right? Because like it's not possible to put everything, like every possible thing in 6 weeks, right? So then going to this maturity assessment, I don't know when, for example, they already joined the workplace, then going through this thing and understanding, okay, this is what we should focus on will help, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. What do you have, like what I'm trying to ask, okay, what are your plans? What do you want to do next? Because you already told us that you have this amazing cookie cutter template for standardization, which makes it super easy for the feature teams, for the product teams to deploy their models. So you already have cookie cutter, reusable CI/CD pipelines, automatic deployment. What do you want to work on next?
So the next things that are important for us, we can do things like A/B testing and monitoring, but those are quite ad hoc. So which means that we don't have standardized monitoring and standardized A/B testing yet. So those are extremely important to get standardized. And the main thing is that we are basically relying on decisions that other teams are taking for monitoring, because monitoring goes beyond the MLOps. Monitoring goes for anything. And I think it's a bad idea for us to choose another tool different than DevOps engineers use. And because they are still in the process of deciding on the tool, we are waiting for it.
So, but is it? I suppose it's a tool for air quotes traditional monitoring. I don't know, it's like New Relic, Datadog, Elk, this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, indeed. And I think it's good enough for pretty much everything. So looking at our use cases are demand forecast and various recommendation engines. So for those specific use cases, we can fit whatever needs to be fit for monitoring of those use cases in these tools. So if you need to talk about evaluating, monitoring LLMs and all of that stuff, probably you need to have something else. But for what we have, like the really like 99% of the use cases, it's probably enough.
What about use cases that do not fit into like this traditional demand forecasting or REXs? Because I imagine that maybe one of the teams decides to use an LLM.
Yeah, now we are working on it also for internal use case, internal search base. That's the first project we are trying out with LLMs. So because it's not customer facing, it's not, I guess, that important. We are still in the process of figuring it out. I guess by end of the year, I will be able to tell more about this specific use case, but right now I'm too focused with other things, on other things.
Okay. We'll have to interview you again, I guess.
Yes.
But for others, I'm pretty sure you will probably cover it to some extent somewhere on LinkedIn or maybe in a newsletter, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And since you mentioned LLMs, I see now that it's kind of trendy, this new thing, LLM Ops. And many students from our course are asking, hey, when do you plan to do an LLM Ops course? And once I got a message like, okay, how can I enroll into your LLM Ops course, which we don't even have. So it's apparently like there is a kind of demand, but I'm just wondering, what do you think about that? Like, is it even a thing? Like, should people really worry about that? Or maybe it's just one of the hype things that come and go?
Well, I believe that's largely a hype thing, because having a customer-facing LLM, which is not going to cost you a fortune, is a real problem, especially if you're talking about other languages than English. So in our use case, well, I mentioned we have brands in Czech Republic, in Serbia, Romania, and Greece. So in English, LLMs may work well, but what about those countries? Like, I'm not so sure. And also the use cases for the retailers. What are the use cases? So I guess maybe search will change in the future. It will be more like LLM powered search. That will be very cool. And another one is maybe recipes for the food retailers. That's something that is very popular. There was a scandal with this New Zealand grocery retailer that suggests some recipes which are not very appealing. But yeah, you shouldn't input some crazy stuff into it, obviously, but still, people may. So I don't know. It's just very little value, I think. It's very hard to measure the value from these LLMs, but the costs to get it running are quite high. You can't even ensure enough GPUs, because if you're in Europe, if you're on Azure, you have a waiting list. Even for large customers like we are, you wait for 4 months before you get a machine that you need to train your thing on. So it's an actual problem. You cannot secure clusters with enough GPUs for yourself. So because of the high demand.
And also even with, like, of course, for English, probably many of these LLMs work, especially, well, I mostly use GPT-4, GPT 3.5 from OpenAI. But even when it comes to like other big languages, like, I don't know, Russian, for example, there are quite many people who use Russian in this world. Sometimes like the grammar is kind of funny. It uses words that I wouldn't typically use. Like, it's kind of weird. So I imagine if we talk about, like, I don't know, the Czech language, where there are fewer people who use this language. So then the model probably saw less data, right, for this language.
Of course.
It's even, it can lead to even stranger results, right?
Yeah, or Greek or Romanian. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Indeed, yeah. So, and it's because the brands on those countries are also relatively small comparing to, well, all other brands together. Doesn't even make any sense to invest into it.
See.
Because the value is small.
So you mostly work with retail, right?
So Ahold Delhaize is one of the largest retail companies in the world. And we have, it's not very known name for some reason.
Yeah, because maybe I should Google it right now.
Yeah. Yes. So we are quite large. Yeah. And it's food retail mostly. Yeah. We also have bol.com, which is like Dutch and Belgian Amazon.
I know that one.
Yeah. So it's also part of Ahold Delhaize. So it's not only food retailers, but also other retail.
But retail is like groceries, this kind of retail, right? Or
Yeah,
more
yeah,
like
yeah.
online retail.
So bol.com is fully online. So that's, I guess, an exception, but mostly it's grocery stores or drug stores.
Okay. Well, now I know what kind of company you work. Like I was thinking, like, how do I ask that? It's kind of like we almost finished the interview and like, okay, what does the company actually do? Okay, and I saw the numbers now online. It's pretty large.
Yeah, it is big.
It's like a huge corporation, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
I see.
And all
So
the
in
brands do
addition,
the same. Yeah, because it's all food retailers in different countries, but overall, the type of problems that everyone has is just the same everywhere. Everyone wants search, demand forecast. Demand forecast is like a big thing. Personalization, loyalty programs.
does each of these brands, do they have like each of them a separate, I don't know, separate team, a separate bunch of teams for data science, and they do data science separately from the rest of the organization?
Yeah, well, some do have data scientists, analytics teams. Some even have machine learning engineers. Some don't have almost anyone doing anything like that. That our team. So in our team, central team, we have machine learning engineers, more like MLOps, and we also have some data scientists that work on creating these standardized solutions for a number of brands that need our help.
So if a brand does not have their own data science team or department, they come to you, or maybe they have, but like the team is small, they come to you, they say, hey, we have these use cases, can you help us, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine, for example, Bol, they already have like a huge team. They probably already have their own MLOps processes, right? They probably don't need your help.
And the tool stack is also different. The tool stack is different, which makes it harder for us to work together on certain things. But we try to cooperate more with them. And they have a lot of knowledge, so it's always interesting discussion.
Because I know about them from conferences. So in Berlin, there is a conference that I really like. It's called Berlin Buzzwords. I try to attend to go there every year. And it's quite common that somebody from Bol goes there, attends, and presents something. So
maybe I should too. I didn't know about this conference, but I love Berlin. Berlin is so cool. I would like to come.
For you, maybe the more relevant one will be PyData PyCon, which happens in April. Yeah. Berlin Buzzwords. I think they are also covering ML engineering, but it's more like, so they talk about search, they talk about data engineering, but recently they also talk about MLOps, ML engineering, this kind of stuff. So it's on topic, of course. So you definitely should submit something.
Cool.
Yeah. So this year, sadly, I did not attend, but I plan to do it next year.
Nice.
Yeah, we should be wrapping up. Maybe let me check if we have any questions. Yeah. So there is one question. What is the course that you take to become an MLOps engineer?
MLOps Zoom camp, right?
but I guess this would be your suggestion, right? But in your case, because your background was economics, like how did you become somebody who's doing what you do?
By doing. So I just talked a lot to software engineers, and together we kind of figured out how to deploy things. No, but we actually are going to create our own course. I can't say when exactly it's going to come out, but we aim for March next year. And this will be specifically for data scientists aiming to be machine learning engineers. So stay tuned, I would say. And if you subscribe to all our media, you will not miss it.
So please send us the links and we will include them in the description.
Cool.
And so this person is saying that they have a software engineering background, and then I think you already did the plug, so I don't need to promote our own course.
Yeah.
Because this course is actually for somebody who has the same background as you. But from what you said, like you learned by doing, and I think this is probably the best way to learn things.
Yeah, definitely. But for software engineers, I would recommend them the same. Team up with data scientists. They definitely need some perspective from software engineers, how to write better code. And there are some nice courses. I used to do a lot of Udacity nano degrees before. I also used to be a mentor there in Udacity at some point of time. And they have some machine learning engineering courses. Maybe it's interesting to check that out. And there are, of course, a lot of data science courses in general. So it's always good to check those out.
In your opinion, how much machine learning should machine learning engineers know?
Yeah, so I think there is a Google paper, I believe, that says only 5% of the whole ML system is machine learning.
That's this famous figure, right? This famous diagram
with the blocks.
Like it's
blocks.
very fine, like very tiny part.
Exactly. I think it's about right. So I think machine learning engineers definitely need to know something about machine learning. So I would suggest to do data science course and understand with what tools data scientists work, and what type of things they produce and how do they think about that. So I think it's very important because it really influences the deployment. But because they're coming from software engineering background, they probably know a lot about the rest of 95%. So I guess it's the advantage.
Okay. Do you think ML engineers need to know some data engineering?
Yeah, actually, I also now interested in data engineering. There is a course from Zach Wilson. He created a bootcamp on data engineering. That's actually a very nice one. I'm following it at the moment. I'm a bit slower than others, I guess, but I am following it. It's really nice. Because a large part of data machine learning pipeline is actually data engineering, because it's always the first step and the most challenging one. Quite often.
Yeah. If you don't have data, like you just have science, right?
Yeah, definitely. But also you need to construct your data engineering pipelines, which are part of your machine learning pipelines, in a smart way. Because often those pipelines tend to run for a long time. So you really need to spend time on optimizing those.
Okay, and actually the question I was going to ask at the end is any resource recommendation, but I think we covered that. And I look at the time and I think we should be wrapping up. So I want to thank you, Maria, for joining us today. It was very nice talking to you. So maybe we should repeat this, because you said you will let us know about something. I don't remember what. But
the course, we will be creating
but there was some other thing too.
LLM, that we are busy with LLMs.
Right. So there are multiple things we will need to talk about. So thanks for joining us today, and thanks everyone for joining us today too.
Thank you so much.
And have a great rest of your week.
Yes, you too. Bye-bye.